Welcome into Payoff Pitch, everybody. We are Action Network's MLB betting podcast. It's Friday, June 23rd. Brendan Glasheen alongside Anthony DiBundo and Charlie DiSturco. The full Friday crew is here in the summer. Love it. We are here every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday during the season. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Payoff Pitch if you haven't done so already. We greatly appreciate it. We've got a 14-game slate on the way tonight, starting tonight. Atlanta, Cincinnati, 6:40. We've got Cardinals and Cubs in London, which we will preview before we leave. They start that series tomorrow at 1 Eastern. So we'll get to that. What else was I going to say? Oh, 2 Apple TV games tonight. Pittsburgh, Miami, and New York, Philadelphia. The 2 Apple TV games are going to cross over. How does that work? I guess technology these days, you can just pick which one you want to watch. It's a beautiful thing. I'm all over the place. I'm excited. Good to have you guys back together here. Charlie, you can go first. Let's just dive right in. Best bet for Friday, please.
Yeah, give me first, because DiBundo had to be out in San Francisco last week while I had to man down the ship by myself. But
you just couldn't. You knew DiBundo he was going to do that. He couldn't wait.
I had to get my shot in early. But another shot that I like is taking the Mariners here on the money line. I got plus money. I think it's down a bit, but I'd still take it all the way to about -110, -115. Logan Gilbert on the mound against Kyle Gibson. And I think the starting pitching edge is too stark here for me not to take Seattle at this number. Logan Gilbert, though he has a 4.31, his expected metrics more in that mid-3 range. So positive regression expected for him. He's really struggled with limiting batters. Like the left on base rate right now is 63.7%. His career average is nearly 10% higher than that. So every batter that's getting on is just coming around to score for the most part. It's extremely low right now. But when you look at his advanced metrics, he's got some pretty impressive numbers. He doesn't walk a lot of hitters. He's in the top 21% of all pitchers in chase rate. His strikeout rate has increased. His expected batting average and hard hit rate have decreased from last season, which last season I was looking to fade Gilbert a lot. Now there are times where I'm looking to back him, and this is a perfect opportunity. All his off-speed pitches have a stuff plus of 113 or better. So you look at him, higher split finger usage, ground balls are going up. He should have more success with left on base rate. And then opposite him, Kyle Gibson. Yep. I'm going to be fading him. I just don't believe that this 35-year-old's having a turnaround. 91 stuff plus rating, expected metrics in the mid-4s, despite an ERA sub-4. His strikeout rate has dipped below 20%. His walk rate's been increasing. His barrel rate's been increasing as well. So you're looking at these two pitchers, and there's a stark difference in talent, at least for me, and from ceiling perspective, for Seattle not to be favored more heavily. The bullpens are about even. Seattle number 1, Baltimore number 5 in xFIP. And the offense, though, Baltimore has a slight edge. They're banged up. No Mountcastle, no McCann, no Cedric Mullins. So their offense, and if you've looked at their lineup the last few days, that back end, that 6 to 9 is not pretty. So I like Seattle here over both halves, but I'm targeting them on the money line here. I just think that this pitching differential is too stark to not take.
DiBundo, I think Charlie hates old guys. I think he hates old pitchers. That's what I've come to figure out.
Yeah, Wainwright, Rich Hill, Kyle Hendricks, Kyle Gibson. I mean, Gibson did have a good start to last season, then really fell off in the second half. So it's certainly a possibility for Gibson, but I have no personal play on this game. I'm lower than generally in the market on Gilbert, although I do like the new splitter. For me, I'm going to go with the Angels and the Rockies under at Coors Field, 11.5. This Rockies lineup that they've been putting out, pretty much all week because of injuries, has been borderline AAA. I mean, if you looked at the lineup that they put out against the Reds on Wednesday, they did get a few homers from Doyle and Grichuk, but up and down like 6 to 9, with Montero being like the last maybe major league hitter at the back end of that rotation of that lineup, and followed by guys who are projected WRC plus from the bat with 70, 75 WRC pluses. They're just not major league hitters, and even Doyle leading off. You can also get them here against the lefty, which is their much worse offensive split. The 2 best hitters in their lineup right now are Nolan Jones, the rookie, and Ryan McMahon, both hit from the left side. Both have pretty strong projected platoon splits too. So it's just a Rockies lineup that isn't going to do much in terms of production, even at Coors Field. Sandoval, I took his under strikeouts as well, under 4.5 plus 118. I'm fine with anything plus 105 or better. Sandoval, his strikeout rate's at a career low this year, 17%. Once you factor in that, Coors is the hardest place in baseball to strike hitters out just because of your pitches don't move as much because of the elevation. And then you think, even though the Rockies lineup on Wednesday was one of the worst in terms of strikeouts, some of the guys, I expect Tovar back. It won't be quite as bad tonight in terms of strikeout rate potential. And then, of course, at home, the Rockies strike out a lot less. And the numbers on Sandoval, I mean, like I said, career low strikeout rate, 17%. The swinging strike rate is comparable to last year, but he's not in the zone as much. So he's been walking more hitters and kind of just pitching from behind, having to groove pitches and getting hit harder. So I'm down on Sandoval. But again, with the conditions, with the wind blowing in, and the Rockies lineup situation right now, I like the under. Kyle Freeland expected to start. First time all week that the Rockies are putting out a major league starter. So that will make a big difference for them. He got some extra time. He was sick or injured, or a little bit of both actually. And now he got, extra few days of rest in between since his last start. So encouraged by that, and think that this game is a little too high, even at Coors 11.5.
Yeah, I did tap into the Wednesday game with Andrew Abbott on the mound. While he had some problems with the home run ball, the Rockies can't hit lefties for shit. No, they had
he ended up with 10 Ks.
10 Ks. I know he hit that K prop. That a boy. But I mean, outside of the home runs, he did a pretty good job of managing it. And the Reds won, which I know some folks here at Action were on the Rockies, so I'm sure that was sort of painful.
Charlie had the Rockies. He's still
yeah, okay, but that I took the Rockies. I took the Rockies, and then it came out that Seabold was scratched, and then it was a bullpen game, and that was when everything just went haywire, right? That's when everyone bought against the Rockies in the market. Was after he was scratched, and they announced it was a bullpen game, and the amount of relief pitchers that they had available because Freeland was not available too. It was a complete and utter disaster, and he looked good for 4 innings. But,
yeah, that was a weird situation just because normally like a bullpen game will project better than like a shitty starter. It's like Connor Seabold being a 5 ERA guy. Him pitching 5 innings is worse for the Rockies than like the Rockies throwing a bunch of bullpen guys out there. So the market moved toward Colorado, but when it's the point where they only have 6 available pitchers for the entire game, that there's like a point of diminishing returns there where it actually becomes worse to throw a bullpen game because 2 of the main guys they wanted to start couldn't pitch. And then the guy that they brought up from the minor leagues didn't even get there in time to actually start the game. And he only pitched a couple innings out of the pen. So they had 6 guys available. It was a bizarre game for sure. But we move on and the Rockies continue to put up AAA lineups. So long as Crone, Blackman, Bryant, the Rockies had a decent lineup, but none of them are healthy right now. So it's really ugly.
Yeah, Seabold also projects better than Kaufman and the guys that they were throwing out there in general. And the Rockies bullpen's not great. That's like the biggest issue. But yeah, it was an utter mess. Luckily, I took some Cincinnati hedge in the middle of that 5th inning blow up because you could tell that it was just the wheels were falling off the wagon in that 5th inning.
Okay, as Debundo said, we move on. It's a new day. We're targeting, so I mentioned Philadelphia and New York meet this weekend. It's an Apple TV game tonight. The Phillies are getting love. I'm going to first on this one. 67% of the bets, 88% of the cash coming in on Philadelphia. Your pitching matchup tonight. Is it Kodai? Is that how you say it? Kodai Senga taking on Taijuan Walker. That is your pitching matchup for tonight. The Philadelphia Phillies, Debundo at BetMGM are -120 on the money line. Are you betting your home team?
I am not. I think this line is about right.
Well, first of all, are you going? Are you going to the game?
I'm not. No, I was there Tuesday and Thursday. I need a break. 2 painful losses to Atlanta. Very disappointing. Bullpen and defense letting us down.
No, folks, he doesn't need a break from betting. He just needs a break from going to the games.
I had the under yesterday, which was nice, but I also had the Phillies. So it was a split for me. But, I think this line's about right. I think the total's a little low. So it opened 9. Some shops, I grabbed a 9 -120 at BetMGM late last night. You can still get 9.5 flat, though, which I'm okay with. Yep. We flipped the wind at Citizens Bank Park instead of, the wind in, which it was all week.
You're the win guy.
We have very much more favorable hitting conditions. It's not that warm in Philly today. It's kind of dreary again, like 65, 70 degrees. By first pitch can be closer to 60, but the wind makes a big difference at the bank, as always, as I say all the time on this podcast. And we have two pitchers, with Senga. He dominated the Phillies in New York. The Phillies chased a lot of his junk, and it was a major problem for their lineup. And it still projects as like maybe a problem. Like, I don't love that with the way they match up with Senga, because the Phillies swing at pitches outside of the zone at a top 6 or 7 rate in baseball. But the Mets putting a lot of balls in play against this defense right now, with Schwarber being as bad as he is, worst outfielder in left field, and Bohm back at third, still below average there. So there are some, matchup voodoo things where the Mets putting a ton of balls in play and never striking out seems to really put a lot of pressure on the Phillies in these matchups. So I do like the over tonight with the conditions. Taijuan Walker's been one of the best starting pitchers in baseball in the last month. I mean, he has really upped his velocity. He's been throwing a ton of splitters and been really effective. He had a poor start to the season, but again, sub-2 ERA in June. So, how much am I really buying into that? Not quite sure. I think the park ultimately will cause problems for Taijuan pitching at home in Citizens Bank Park. The sample's not big enough yet to really draw like a meaningful conclusion on like, is Taijuan going to have problems pitching in our ballpark because of his home run kind of history? But it will be interesting to watch just going forward. How does he perform at home versus away? So far, he's been much better at home, but again, the splits are way too small.
Speaking as a fan of the Mets who had Taijuan Walker for 2 to 3 years, just wait until the end of July and August when the wheels fall off, because he has, if you look at his numbers, he's always above average in the first half and one of the worst pitchers in baseball the second half. Happened the last 2 seasons with the Mets. The wheels fall off on him altogether.
That's code for Debundo. Don't get your hopes up. This guy's going to keep pitching.
Yeah, this June thing, it's just a month. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a little better with the splitter, but since he added it last year, and he was able to actually consistently, be decent down the stretch. I mean, I'm not expecting him to be a top of the rotation starter. I just need him to fill innings. So he's been okay.
Phillies have won 5 of his last 6 starts, and at home, not a ton of walks, but 2-3 walks in that ballpark can get a little dicey with Taijuan Walker. Charlie, you got an angle on this game? Again, the money's coming in on the Phillies with Walker on the mound against Senga.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could play this in multiple ways. I don't hate the overlook. The way that I would probably end up playing it is by taking a couple props in this matchup. I haven't officially played anything yet, but Schwarber was one of the guys that caught my eye off the rip. One of the worst defensive players in baseball, but hitting 250 with 7 homers in June this far. Always seems to be June that Schwarber kind of turns it around and sees his power up. And Senga, you look at his early starts and then then the middle and then the end is in 3 parts of 3 months. First half, when he first came up to baseball, the first month he gave up a lot of home runs. The second, he was really generating either a lot of walks or strikeouts and wasn't really giving up many barrels or home runs. And then recently it's kind of come back to haunt him a bit. 3 home runs in 3 starts in June. So I think that there's like an opportunity to kind of fade Senga in the home run market if the Phillies are able to kind of lay off the junk. That's why I'm not targeting, Nick Castellanos as much as I am Schwarber, because Castellanos is notorious for chasing everything low. And I think Schwarber, Bryce Harper, I don't know if he's a home run candidate, but more a total bases guy right now, given the injury and his just lack of power. Could be 2 looks on that end. And then on the opposite end, I've been toying around with possibly Francisco Lindor. If you look at how he's performed the last 15 days at the plate, his hard hit rate and rolling WOBA graphs are both skyrocketed up. So he's seeing the ball extremely well across both sides of the plate. So more props for me, if anything, smaller level props. Don't go too crazy with them. But with the wind blowing out, the conditions that it's in, and 2 pitchers that are prone to being blown up, I kind of like a prop angle as long as the Phillies are not chasing everything in the dirt from Senga.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Senga is like 13% walk rate is barely passable for a starting pitcher. That's like Edward Cabrera level. And we talk about him and we joke around about him on the show and how, we love the stuff, but we don't love the fact that he walks everybody. And he's like barely a starter. I mean, that's for Senga. If he's going to maintain those kind of walk rates, it's going to be very hard for him to keep an ERA anywhere below 3.5, 3.6. So it's just kind of the reality of him, even as good as the stuff is, as high as his strikeout rate is.
Yeah.
Let's dive into underdogs for Friday. Now, again, to take folks behind the curtain, we don't do that very often. Typically, we come into some of these slates, and some of these guys love the underdog spots. But what alarms me is when we put the doc out for the show, we kind of roll through. They put their bets in, and I just kind of tee them up and get out of the way. I can't help but get in the way when I see both Anthony and Charlie gave their bet, they gave their team, their dog they want to bet, and then they put the word small next to the team, which, again, code for I'm going to bet this, but I don't know if I feel great. And that is not, I'm not unit shaming, be responsible betting. I get it. But when I see small, I sense a lack of confidence, or you just love the number. So Charlie, let's not bury the lead. Charlie likes the A's today, but small. Why?
Yeah. So listen, the Oakland Athletics
I
have
can't
fallen.
help myself. Sorry.
The Oakland Athletics have fallen back down to earth.
Yep.
They've lost 8 in a row. They kind of look like the same old Oakland Athletics after that win streak. But I think that this number is way too high given the pitching matchups and the fact that Chris Bassett's on the mound. Bassett, we talked about him multiple times on this show. His stuff plus is 90. He ranks below average in just about every single pitch he has in his arsenal, and it's a deep arsenal, but they're all below average. His expected ERA, expected FIP, both half runs higher than actual. Strikeout rates down, walk rates up, barrel rates jumped up 3%. There's a lot of concerns with Bassett. Like, he's a completely different pitcher from when he was with the New York Mets. You look at last year, 227 expected batting average, 359 expected slugging. This year, those numbers have jumped up nearly, 253 expected batting average, 430 expected slugging. So concerning jump wise. He's a Jekyll and Hyde pitcher. So you either get him when he's, lights out. And I pulled the numbers from the last 3 stretches he had, or 4 stretches. He started 23 shutout innings pitched. Then he gave up 13 runs, 9 earned in 10 1/3. Then he went 15 2/3 innings of 2 runs. And then the last 2 starts, 6 2/3 of 13 runs, 11 earned. So the defense has not been doing him any favors. He hasn't been pitching that well. And now this number's plus 260. It's just so much for me not to pass on this. And why I'm playing it small is just because it's the Athletics. They don't have a great bullpen. Caprillian's on the mound. I'm not that high on him in general, but I do think he has some positive regression coming. His expected metrics in mid-4, mid-low 5, actual ERAs up in the mid-6s. He's taken a step forward with his strikeout percentage, and his left on base rate is a lot lower than career average. So when you put it all together, and you take in the fact that Toronto over the last 14 days are 21st in WRC plus, Bichette is nursing a thumb injury. We have no update on him. Even if he comes back, could he be, his power or hitting be mitigated? Could be. Vlad Guerrero Jr., he's been a different hitter since he had right knee soreness. He's not hitting for power. He's not hitting that well. Alejandro Kirk on the injured list. So when you look at how the Blue Jays offense has been faring, it's not been great. Bassett is a concerning pitcher. So it's enough for me to take a stab on the Athletics here. I'm throwing a half a unit on it. Plus 260 is just too much for me not to take. So yeah, that's my whole thought process. The A's have the advantage, I think, at this number, and it's too good of a number not to take. But I can't fathom putting a whole unit behind Caprillion and the A's right now.
All right, fair enough. DeBundo, favorite dog on the Friday slate, please.
Yeah, I want to talk through this game too, because it's very strange to me what's happening with Chris Bassett this year. He's had incredible catcher splits. So the Jays have 3 different catchers they use, and depending on which one has caught him, has had a major impact on his strikeouts per 9. You see that sometimes with a new team. Guy comes in, he's not as familiar. The other thing, and this is my tinfoil hat thing, and this is something Eno Sarris talked about on Rates and Barrels. What's going on with these home road splits? Because any pitcher who has a 2.1 ERA at home and a 5.8 ERA on the road, like, I know the sample is small and there's a lot of noise in that, but, and then Charlie just talked about it, the difference in the quality, right? Like, his outcomes have been so wide and so variable. Like, one day he looks like Cy Young, the next day he looks like, somebody who doesn't belong in the majors. And that kind of stuff, especially when it keeps happening on the road. And Bassett is a guy who uses the pitch comm and calls the pitches himself. makes me wonder if something isn't happening with Bassett when he's on the road. And I think it's something that I'm going to be watching. And it's something that's certainly possible where teams are catching him. He throws a ton of pitches. And like Charlie said, the stuff isn't great. He doesn't win with having overpowering stuff. He wins with you not being able to predict which one of his 6 pitches he's going to throw. So the fact that Bassett keeps having this random, seemingly random, but maybe not so random failure on the road and these random blowups makes me wonder if something isn't happening. So that's my thought. Of course, they're at home tonight. Yeah, I have my own personal doubts about Kaprielian too. Fastball velocity was down about 1.5 miles in his last start. Spin rates on every pitch were down pretty considerably in that last outing. It did come with an improved swinging strike rate relative to his season average. But again, he played the Phillies, a team that will swing and miss a decent amount and will chase a decent amount. Jays are a much more contact-heavy team in the middle of their lineup, especially. So I like the under 15.5 pitching outs for Kaprielian. I think he'll struggle today. I was trying to think of a good way to go against him, given the velo dip and the spin rates issue. And I found that was the best way because I'm really not trusting Bassett either. So that's my bet there, under 15.5 outs. So basically he will not throw more than 5 innings.
All right, very good. We were theorizing that maybe also it's the coffee. You know, Bassett needs his Tim Hortons or something. Yeah, sleeping in your own bed part too, possibly. His struggles on the road, Chris Bassett on the mound. But again, they're home tonight against the A's. What, Charlie, what do you got? Charlie, Debundo, what do you got for an underdog, please?
Yeah, I'm taking the Pirates small here. The Marlins syndicate has struck again. Second straight day, the Marlins have gotten absolutely nuked in the market. They opened -120 against Keller yesterday with Garrett on the mound, closed closer to -150, 160, which is a huge move. Given the market's pretty efficient generally with these openers now. You don't see those kind of openers, especially when multiple books are opening -120 and keeping it there overnight and the morning after. Well, today, the Marlins opened a little high, maybe, I thought, -175. And now, they've been bet up again to the point where you can get Pirates as high as +160, 165 with Luis Ortiz. Ortiz had command issues, but the stuff is still very good. The stuff says that on any given day, he can, dominate a lineup. And it puts the Pirates in their better split against left-handed pitching as well with Luzardo on the mound. Luzardo had a dominant start to the year. You've started to see a little bit of regression in his numbers. He probably wasn't going to keep up the performances he was doing early in the year. He got blown up once. It was a little shaky against the Nationals in his last start. So there are some angles here for Pittsburgh. The game also, like the Marlins bullpen is far from elite. It's an average bullpen. So once Luzardo's out of the game, this game gets a little bit closer to even as well. So, at +160, 165, I'm going to take a small bet, half unit on the Pittsburgh Pirates with Ortiz and hope that his stuff is good and the command is decent today.
Excellent. I think you both have a couple more. I know Debundo just hit on Kaprielian under outs. Anything else, Debundo, you want to throw in there before we get to the London series?
Yeah, I took some Kerry Carpenter to homer +650. Love his barrel approach. It's been very successful for him against a right-handed pitcher in Maeda, who his fastball continues to be not back. The last AAA start was not encouraging. We've talked about Maeda back when he was, injured before. That the fastball being as bad as it was is going to make him extremely prone to homers and giving up homers. And he's always had the good secondaries, but even the spin rates on the secondaries are down and did not recover in his last AAA outing. So there's all kinds of concerns with Maeda here to the point where I actually like the over at 8.5 in that game. There are still a couple 8.5s out there. And then I took some Carpenter to homer, my favorite, slugger on the Tigers. Torkelson's had a real surge in barrel rate, but with the platoon splits, with Carpenter getting a righty, he's been their best hitter, best power hitter. So give me Kerry, who I am now a proud dynasty owner of Kerry Carpenter.
Your fantasy team.
Yes.
Glad you got that in there.
Well, he had to quit the Action Network Fantasy League, but he's in.
You quit?
Well, he gave up. He doesn't check his lineup.
Waving the
dead last, waving the white flag, Brendan.
Well, hey, you're not going to the Phillies game tonight, so you have time to check it.
Yeah.
The lineups.
Start doing your work.
Charlie, anything else before we go to the London series?
I also dabbled on the Pirates small. +170 is just an absurd number right now for two pitchers that I don't know. They're not even. Like Luzardo's a little bit better, but like Luis Ortiz's off speed pitches are both excellent and generate a lot of whiffs. And if as long as he's able to locate those and nibble around the edges of the zone, this game is more than live. I mean, yesterday I was on the Pirates first 5 in money line, split those, and I mean they were at 4-1 going into the bottom of the 8th, and as soon as Mitch Keller left, they gave up 5 runs. So like, yes, the Pirates bullpen is a concern, but the Pirates are in their better split here against a lefty, and the Marlins are in their lesser split here. So I like the Pirates small, possibly doing a 777 today. We'll see. The slate is absolutely disgusting, and the odds for props even have been very like not appetizing. Like a lot of the guys in like the Coors games and against Patrick Corbin, we're seeing a lot of juiced 1.5s or plus money 2.5. So stay tuned to see if that gets dropped or not.
All right. Pirates have lost 10 straight games. We talked about this Tuesday, that there were a bunch of streaks of 5 or more wins or losses in baseball, like 10 teams. And some of them have ended. Some have continued, like the Pittsburgh Pirates.
And the Cincinnati Reds.
Go Reds.
Yeah, the Reds are done, unfortunately. Hunter Green is down. They're gonna run out of pitchers.
Well, isn't he was retroactive though, no? Or is there an update, a worse update?
I thought it was gonna be longer now, but I could be wrong.
Well, regardless, we got Abbott, we got Brandon. I think Brandon. I don't even know. Williamson. The Reds.
I mean, you kind of just
Weaver's going today against Atlanta. We'll see. They're not playing the Royals or the Rockies anymore.
Well, Luke Weaver's not not good, but we'll see if they can edge one out here.
We're going to go to the July 4th holiday, and they're probably going to lose like 7 in a row. Okay,
No.
like this division is a mess.
Stop it.
I mean, it's not a mess for the best team, the Chicago Cubs, which I've said since.
I was actually, funny enough, not to derail this conversation fully, but the Cubs do play in London, so it's a nice transition. I was curious, like I was looking at them to win the Central too, because I don't know if there's anyone in this division that. Like the problem is I keep adding to my plate, and I don't know when I have too much or if I'm just trying to
when do I stop?
Yeah, because
I just identify the Brewers as a fraud, and then
but I have
So I have Reds, I have Cubs, and I still have a Cardinals ticket, which is in deep shit.
See, I did the opposite. Is that I bet on the Brewers and not the Cardinals to win the division. So I have them at plus 175 to win the Central. Then I have the Reds to make the playoffs at 14-1. So then do I add Cubs? Another half a unit at like plus 500. Like that's what my mind is like working through a bunch of. But then when do I just like then I'm rooting for every team like Anthony. Like Anthony's like, oh, those are my guys. Every team in the NL Central except for the Brewers are his guys.
And the Pirates. I never bet the Pirates. So
maybe in a couple weeks we could do like a box break of what number you got each NL Central team at.
Dubundo adds throughout the year. Like, so I might look at the Cubs because I do think that they have the highest ceiling of any team in this division.
They have a few holes too.
Maybe London is what the Cardinals need to turn around their season. They are 9 out, bottom of the division at 31-44, but it feels long from over, as we said, in that division. Cubs and Cardinals will play 2 standalone national TV games on Saturday. Catch that one on Fox, Sunday Night Baseball. Well, Sunday at some point.
Sunday morning. Yes, wake up and breakfast, as we like to say.
Yeah, it's like
Premier League
NFL London.
Yes,
love it.
Coffee, and some winnings. That's what we need.
Oh, that Maroon 5 Sunday morning song that just hits. Yeah, it's good. Action Network will have plenty of coverage on how to bet these games from park factors, pitching, hitting. These guys are going to cover the hitting props. Charlie and Dubundo will have you covered on hitting, batting props for that London series, home run props, and more. So check out the free award-winning Action Network app for all of the coverage. Last London series was in 2019, Yankees Red Sox. Final scores ranged from 17-13. 12-8. Fences have been moved back, but it should still be a ripe run-scoring environment. Maybe not as much as those Mexico games that we had with that was San Francisco and San Diego, but should be a fun series in London. If either one of you want to go here, we do have a lineup. You can, if you shop around. Cubs are favorites in the first game. Totals at 14.5. Just quickly, thoughts on the series, how you're going to go about betting it, Charlie, and just what you might have in terms of coverage this weekend on Action Network.
Yeah, so I have the hitting props article for Saturday's game, which is Steele against Wainwright, which you mentioned 14.5 total, Cubs minus 130. Whether or not the prop lines are out at a normal hour, we'll see. But I will be at least breaking down what hitters have plus or minus matchups regarding that. When you look at how to bet this game or this series in general, I think what you either want to play the over in game one or wait to see what happens, because I think this could be a lot similar to the Mexico City game, where in the first game we saw the line opened up, got bet up extremely hard on the over, it flew over, and then to make up for that, odds makers reset the line for game two at an extremely high number, and you could buy back on the under. I think the same thing is going to happen here.
Wasn't that second game like 18 and a half, 19
I think it
and a half?
opened, I think it got to 20. I think didn't it get to the 20s and then got bet down. And so I think we could, if this game goes exactly like game one in London was in 2019, or game one in Mexico City, where the balls are juiced and whatever the hitting conditions are favorable, we could see that. And I would look to buy back on the under. And also when you think about the pitching, Wainwright is an awful pitcher. So like if it's Cubs or nothing for me, or maybe a Cubs team total, he's just horrendous. You look at his metrics, he's just finally the age is catching up with him. You make fun of me enjoying beating up on the old guys. His expected slugging, expected batting average, they're horrendous. He's not getting strikeouts. He's just old and not good. So like you would want to bet the Cubs here, or look at an over if you think that Steele will struggle a bit too, or the Cubs team total over, or the props, which I'll have a breakdown on. And then in game two, buy back on the under. Stroman and Flaherty, decent at limiting barrels. And I think that the number, if it's a high scoring game one, we'll see an inflated game two line, because everyone's going to run to the window to bet the over when you want to go contrarian and bet the under. And I would probably lean the Cardinals in that matchup too.
Dubundo, I know you have some analysis on the dimensions. As we said, the fences are being moved back.
Yeah, I am really struggling to come to a conclusion on what I think about this, but I think I'm going to be betting the under in the first game. Because I've talked to Derek Carty about this. Derek Carty is the guy who does the bat projections. He's very smart at, park projections and whatnot. And even he was like, I don't understand how this park plays as favorable as it does. Because if you think about it, with Mexico City, it's very easy, right? Like, oh, we're playing at 7,500 feet as opposed to, sea level. That's a big difference. It's Coors times 1.5. Well, London is at sea level. The London Stadium plays at sea level. The main theory, and this is pretty believable, is that the way the stadium was designed, it was built for the Olympics in 2012, which is, of course, a lot of track and field, a lot of running. The way that the bowl was produced, it was to limit all air drag and to not get any airflow through the stadium to affect the runners so they can run as fast as possible. And the result of that is that when baseballs fly, there's not as much drag slowing the ball down, thus it flies further. And this is something the Yankees, we knew after they took batting practice, the Yankees were saying, like, these balls are flying out of this ballpark. Now, the biggest difference, though, is that in 2019, that was the most juice ball in the history of Major League Baseball. The whole season, everybody homered, hit record homers. And they may have even used an even more juice ball because it was the big London showcase with the Yankees and the Red Sox. And, they wanted to, promote the game. We don't know what the balls are going to look like, but the baseball that they're using in 2023 is very, very different from the baseball of 2019 when we saw, 30 runs and 20 runs scored. Now, the fences make a big difference too, because the stadium dimensions of 2019, 330 to the corners, 387 to center, that would have played as the second smallest park in baseball. Now, with the fences being pushed back in center and the power alley, so like the gaps being pushed back, it plays more like an average ballpark in terms of dimensions. So an average ballpark at sea level with different balls, 14.5 is a lot just for air drag. So I'm probably going to bet the under. I'm waiting to see if we don't get a 15. I think there's going to be a lot of public sentiment on the over, and I'm going to be the contrarian who has the under in hopes that Wainwright doesn't get bombed. The other thing is that because it's a standalone two-gamer and the teams have so much rest built up on either side of this, you could see more bullpen usage. You could see teams redline their bullpens and kind of, really work them. That being said, I don't really want to bet on Adam Wainwright either. So it would be Cubs or nothing for me. I'd probably
do
bet the under in the first game just because I think the market might be too high on this ballpark.
out of curiosity,
Mentioned.
do you think that they send juice balls to that? Like that's the thing is like, do they just send this power juice balls to London because it's a standalone game and they want to get fans to like baseball? That's a question, and that's why it's hard to make such an assessment on. I think game one, which is what I was saying. Maybe it's better to wait and then take the under in game two because of that. We have no idea what to expect in general.
Yeah, I mean it's hard. I mean, I'm very apt to laugh when I bet the under, and then their balls are just flying left and right, and I'm like, oh, they're juiced, and I can just complain. But we'll see. But I envision myself being on the under in game one. Steele, less so than Wainwright, but Steele has done a very good job his entire young MLB career of limiting hard contact with his kind of the way his pitches move and kind of fooling hitters a bit, even though his strikeout numbers aren't really impressive.
All right. Again, Saturday, 1:00 start, 1 Eastern. It'll be the only game on tomorrow. Chicago, St. Louis, and then 10 a.m., correct? 10 a.m. Sunday.
Yeah.
Is what we've got
Eastern.
for the Eastern, right? Correct. 10 a.m. Eastern on Sunday when these teams meet. ESPN. That will be your Sunday night baseball. Oh, no, they're actually doing 2 games. Houston, Los Angeles, the second. That's the real Sunday night baseball. Okay. I thought they were just replacing one.
And then fade them on Monday. That's the way.
Perfect. We'll discuss that on Monday. Great transition. Charlie's full of the good transitions today. For Debundo, and you are. This is when I start wrapping the show, this is when Charlie goes and picks up the Reds hat and throws it in the camera. Very good. Find Debundo and Charlie DiSturco in the Action Network app. If they add more, I say if they will, go look in the app. They will have stuff all weekend long as well. And yes, look forward to the coverage over on actionnetwork.com. Action Network app for the London series goes down Saturday and Sunday. Thank you all for tuning in. Brendan Glasheen signing off. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast presented by BetMGM. We'll talk to you on Monday.